Hey there, Dave Sobel here from MSP Radio and the Business of Tech podcast. Welcome to Thursday's live stream. I am chatting it up and discussing some of my thinking for part 2 of CES Roundup. Also, for those of you who are following along, this has been experimentation with getting live streaming to look right. So I've been playing out with some of the new tech too. So thus, this is just sort of on demand, doing it for fun. But I'm going to dive into some actual topics here, and we're going to try and talk this through. If you're interested, you can join me on the chat on Facebook, on Twitch, or on YouTube. I am using tech that lets me see and relay all of that. Additionally, this kind of content is what you'd find on the Business of Tech podcast. You can find that at mspradio.com, a daily 5-minute podcast that gives you everything you need to know from the world of technology from a business services perspective. So appreciate you joining me on the podcast every single day and subscribing. That's how this all works. So let's go ahead and dive in. I want to talk some CES Roundup today. So first, let's dive into one of my big projections, if you will, from what I was talking about on the show. If you remember, there's 4 big trends we're looking for coming out of CES. The first is 5G. I made some predictions that we were going to see less about phone announcements specifically at CES and much more about the industry as a whole. Looks like that's coming true. While we didn't see specific phone announcements so far, like from a big perspective at CES, there's a notable CNET article that did catch my eye here. AT&T announcing they're going to have 15 phones in 2020, covering about 200 million people across the U.S. Additionally, buried within this article is also some information about Verizon, who plans to have this 20 5G devices within 2020. This is where I was getting my attention from. So this is the raw devices that they are adding to the networks themselves. 5G is going to be something in 2020. We're going to start seeing those devices. I'm anticipating some of those devices are Apple ones, not just Android. What I'm looking for still, and haven't seen a ton of really interesting stuff coming out of CES yet, is those other scenarios. Like what are we going to see from a, kind of in use case scenario from the way 5G is going to get implemented. I haven't seen a ton of that yet. So I still have my eye to what we're going to see from that perspective. So that's my 5G stuff that I've seen. I'm not going to talk about this specifically on the podcast yet because, okay, you've got some phones. I was kind of expecting that. I'm looking more specifically to find specific use cases. If you've spotted ones, I'd love to know about it because so far I'm just seeing a bunch of stuff around all of the other, pieces that are coming out about it, which I want to talk about because I think there's some interesting stuff over on the smart home side. This is where I'm starting to see some interesting stuff. I'm going to talk about 3 particular smart devices, smart home things that I've spotted that I thought were interesting. First, I want to talk about this NFC Lock. This one is kind of a really intriguing smart lock approach. So what we've got here is a product where it is an NFC-enabled lock. Those little black keys are actually like real keys. You slide them into a physical lock, but unlike the teeth that you would see in a typical lock, these are actual NFC chips built into them, and that's an NFC reader. So what you can actually do is fully manage which keys go into the lock and change them if you need to. So I could say, like, I'm going to change all of the locks within that and retrofit an existing lock, as well as the fact that because it's not doing some of the other tricks, you can't remote control this, I can't remote flip it, from the way that I might be able to cloud enable something. This is a really smart kind of implementation. The Verge, Dieter's Bone, picked this up as his favorite thing. I thought this was also super cool. This is the kind of stuff that I was intrigued by in terms of an actual implementation that makes a ton of sense. I could also see this extending out potentially into the NFC reader in your phone. I would love to make my phone my key to access things, making this a physical security management perspective. So I thought that was also super interesting. So that was the first one that I wanted to highlight. Next up, Amazon and voice assistants allowing you to pay for gas with Alexa. Now, this is one where I sort of have to laugh and go, I'm not sure how much I want to actually use this, but I like the idea. The idea where you're going to be able to make gas payments at the pump from your car means you can have voice interactions with the pump. Say, I want to pay my gas, pay for my gas. I want to make the payment via Amazon Pay. I'm intrigued. And I'm intrigued for two reasons. The first reason that I'm intrigued on this is the fact that I've been talking about voice as a user interface for a while now. I'm looking for more interesting applications where I can talk with a device and interact with it, and it will do stuff. The other thing that's interesting to me is the fact that the embedded Amazon Pay stuff. This is really interesting because from a security perspective, I've become really heightened to the fact that credit card theft is happening on a bunch of different fronts by people scanning at the physical devices, are putting the embedded readers onto ATMs, onto gas pumps. In the business of tech, I covered the Wawa hack where Wawa's credit card information payment processor was hacked and all of that information was leaked. You can solve for that by using something like Android Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, by actually using those payment systems at the pump because it's one-time code interactions. You can actually make your interaction a lot more safe. This interests me because now we're getting an area of payment that makes a lot more sense. Here's where I think we're getting into something that's actually kind of interesting. Dig into that. You've actually got some information around what we're going to see from a voice payment perspective. I was surprised is as big as it already is. 2.1 billion in voice payments volume in 2018. I want to know what these people are buying. I really do. But anticipating that is essentially going to be 4x by 2024. That's interesting. This means that there actually is something to this in terms of the way that it's all going to go. Now, here's my last of the super cool smart devices. This one is really innovative and really different. This is a personalized flight board. The innovation is the display itself. Now, what happens here is if you're flying somewhere, you scan your boarding pass. That point, the system knows who you are. It's not actually using facial recognition, but instead using cameras, identifying you as a visual blob, so to speak, and then can track you based on knowing, okay, I've identified that blob being that person and can track you around. The display is made up of different light emitting diodes that are sending out different style of light at different angles positioned to get to the eyes of the viewer. That's super cool. Here's an example. This is what sort of jumped to me. This is a photographer taking a picture of the same screen. This is the same screen. This is the mirrors reflected off of it at a slight angle so that you can see. That's one screen displaying all 12 of those images at the same time. The idea then being that you can display pinpointed information directly to a specific person. I want to show that person some information. Now, this is Minority Report kind of stuff, right to the extreme. This really gets me my interest. So that's the idea is that you can actually go ahead and show this, from the way that it would interact, that we can actually look at these. Parallel reality. How's that for a cool buzzword? Where the display is actually showing at different people do different stuff. I thought this was super interesting and super innovative. This is the kind of business app that I can say like, okay, I can see how this is interesting and amazing. Everyone that's been talking about this online says this is really kind of one of those really incredibly interesting things. How about flying Ubers, delivery robots? I think we may end up covering this over on the Business of Tech podcast. We like talking a ton about drones, but I thought that that more innovation around the drone space was super interesting to me. Finally, last one I want to talk about is Sony and their concept car. Again, there was some buzz on social media, people saying, oh, I don't want to see a Sony car. I don't trust them. Remember, this is a prototype. We're not actually expecting Sony to really ever sell this car. What's interesting, though, is the application of the tech. Take a look at the way that we're looking at the displays here. We've taken the entire display, made that all smart technology. You can interact completely with the car based on touch panels, by being able to get access to it all visually. Thought that was super interesting. The software is what makes that. Cool looking car. We've actually got displays built into the background, and of course it's EV and electric, and so you can actually pull this all together. Innovation in this space is pretty interesting. Again, we're seeing these are industrial smart home usage. We think about it from a consumer perspective, but this is the kind of stuff that I would really expect to see become interesting from a business perspective. So these are kind of the trends that I'm thinking about that I think are again pretty interesting to talk about. All right, so let's break it down, the big trends that I'm looking for. Again, I don't think the CES coverage is completely done here. I think we're again looking for 4 major trends from a business perspective that I think are interesting. The first is 5G. What we're going to be looking for coming out of CES in the summation, and I'm going to probably talk about it either on tomorrow's podcast for Friday or on Mondays as the stories roll in. I'm looking for 5G use cases. I'm looking for the stuff that actually pulls it all together from a use case perspective. That's the stuff that I'm interested. Second, I've been watching the gaming space. If you caught my live stream on Tuesday, I was talking a lot about some of the innovations in the tech itself, like in the way modular computing might look. That's been the major stuff that I've seen out of the gaming space. I haven't seen a ton more since then that I'm interested in from a business perspective. We've covered smart home today. Finally, services. That's the one area where I haven't seen a ton yet that's really moved me and said, okay, these are interesting services stuff that I want to talk about. That piece is the final piece of the trend. Really appreciate you spending some time with me on the live stream today or watching as a video. If you like what I'm up to, visit mspradio.com. Got a couple of asks for you. First, subscribe to the podcast. Daily 5-minute podcast. You can catch it on all your favorite podcatchers. Get insights and information in a real tight, organized 5 minutes every single day. That's the first ask. Second, we've launched a newsletter. You can get a weekly set of information, some of the top stories, pulling together the live streams, the videos, and the podcast itself, so you can get that delivered to your inbox every Monday. Sign up for the newsletter. And if you like what I'm up to, do me a favor and do all of the social media stuff. Like it on Facebook, MSP Radio, Twitter, MSP Radio News. Find me on YouTube or on Twitch or on Periscope, all your favorite streaming applications. And if you think this stuff is cool, share it with somebody. I'm trying to go in a very different direction from a business of tech coverage and really appreciate your time and attention. Thanks all for listening. Looking forward to continuing interactions ongoing.